Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of She Talks Business. I am super excited to be here today with Liza. Um, you know what? I need to start this over because I didn't ask you how to properly pronounce your last name.
Oh, I
Um,
think you had it
M.
actually.
Amlani, right? Amlani?
Yeah,
Okay,
perfect.
so we're going to start over.
Okay.
Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of She Talks Business. If you've been listening to the season with my niece, Mackenzie, and I hope you enjoyed it. I received a few emails from people letting me know that they enjoyed those conversations. But we are now on to something new. And I am here with my guest, Liza Amlani, and I can't wait for you to listen in to this conversation, especially those of you who have a retail background. This is going to be an exciting show for you. So, Liza, welcome. Thank you for saying yes to being on the show.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. I was so excited to receive your email, and I was like, I wish I had done this sooner.
No, the time is perfect. It's great. It's great, 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 and I'm glad to have you here. So, my first question for you today is tell us a little bit about your journey and what made you decide to open your own consulting business.
Well, let's see, how much time do we have? No, I'm just kidding. Well, I started in retail, and I would say that I started in retail probably when I was 13. It was definitely illegal to work in a store, but I did. I was obsessed, and I just loved it. I loved the interaction with the customers. I loved just talking about product, and I think I knew that really early on. I didn't know that I would be in the business of retail. I always thought I would be a fashion designer. So all through high school, I went through thinking I'm going to be this amazing fashion designer. I was very inspired by Chanel and fashion shows in school and all of that fun stuff, while also working in stores in the mall. So I was getting insight into that retail business side of things quite early. Having an opinion, of course, was important back then. So I think that really kind of led the way for me. And then I moved into buying pretty much right at the start of my career. I started as a designer and decided that, okay, I'm going to go back into buying. My claim to fame is that I designed all the bags for FIFA World Cup 2002. And then I was like,
Nice.
that's enough. And then I moved into buying. So I was in buying for about 22 years, buying and product development. My last industry role was Ralph Lauren. I was based in the UK and London and head of buying for the Lauren brand. So I covered UK, Ireland, Scandinavia, the Baltics, got a real good sense of global merchandising and buying. And
Mhm.
then I shifted into consulting in 2018 with Accenture, and I was their merchandising SME. So I worked with Nike for a couple of years, a few other brands, and started my own firm November 2020. I think a lot of people made changes and leaps and bounds of changes during the pandemic, and I
Mhm.
was one of them. So started the firm, and it's been really great. Just getting to know what I'm good at and feeling comfortable and confident in my opinions and what I had to say. So that I
How
told you it'd be long.
how has the shift been for you from working in corporate and working for big brands and having a big, like a wide range of responsibilities like you've had to now doing your own thing?
I think when I was working in corporate and for different organizations, I'd say that I was, just a small part of the organization, even though I had like this huge job with buying product globally for these amazing brands. I really only saw one side of the business. Today, being an entrepreneur, as
Mhm.
you're touching everything. And then until you get really comfortable about who you are, what you're going after, and what you're really good at within your well, for me, within, retail strategy, what I really want to focus on, now I'm able to really dive into that. But I still touch everything. Like I touch accounting, I touch marketing a lot. Social media plays, such a big role for us today. So, I do that. And then of course I also teach, right? So I think teaching young minds about what it takes to be a retailer is so multifaceted than I ever thought it would be.
Well, before the show, we were talking about how we are, very close in age. And I started my retail journey when I was 13 as well. And so I'm curious as to what your perspective is on today's in-store customer experience versus the way it was when we were young. I mean, I was managing a retail store, I think, at the age of 19. And
What?
so thinking back then and thinking about what the standards and expectations were, especially for customer service, in comparison to what you see today. From my perspective, it's not gotten better; it's gotten worse. Like
Yeah,
it's not the way it once was.
I would 100% agree with you. I think that today we talk about the customer experience where back then we didn't even say those words. That wasn't
Mhm.
CX wasn't a term we ever used because it was implied that
Mhm.
customer service was a standard that you had to adhere to, that you had to live up to in order to keep your job, keep sales going, increase revenue, and of course, build that relationship with the customer. Today, I think that retail has become so, I want to say muddy,
Mhm.
just because there are so many things to consider today versus, 2 decades ago or even ten years ago, where customer experience is now on the forefront because we need to engage customers in so many different ways. We have more channels than we did back then,
Mhm.
right?
For sure.
Social media, TikTok Shop is just taken off.
Mhm.
And I think this is something that retailers and brands today are still not comfortable with. And they need to get comfortable very, very quickly because the customer is truly changing the way they engage with brands. And
Mhm.
it's not necessarily through the brands anymore. Influencer marketing is huge.
Mhm.
And I think we don't give it enough credit that it deserves today. And I think that brands and retailers see that because of what they're struggling with in terms of inventory management and getting close to their customer. So, back to your question, I'd actually like to ask you that same question because you were in retail for such a long time and you understand the retail industry. What advice would you give to retailers today that are struggling to connect with their customer?
Ban iPhones and Androids from the shop floor.
Okay.
Honestly, because I feel as a consumer, every single time I walk into a store, the people who are supposed to be there serving customers are on their phones and they're not focused on serving the customer. When you go into a restaurant and you are being, served by a waiter or waitress in that restaurant, they're not on their phones looking at Facebook, TikTok, Instagram while you're looking at the menu. Their phones are tucked away. You don't see them. But when you walk into a retail store today, it's more common than not to see the people that work in the store on their phones. And they're not they're not making eye contact with the customer. They're not building rapport with the customer. They're not bringing add-ons back to the fitting room for the customer. They're not doing
Yeah.
all of the things that make an in-store experience special. And so I actually think that bricks and mortar retail could eventually go away if they don't improve the in-store customer experience. Because why would I go to a store if I'm not actually going to receive any customer service? I walked into a Banana Republic in Orlando at a high-end mall a couple months ago. I was so excited to be there. I was ready to shop. It had been a while, and I'm like, I'm going all out. I'm shopping.
Yeah.
And I think I passed by four sales associates on the floor, and
Oh,
all four of them were on their phones. And as I was on my way out of the store, one of them still with their phone, literally in front of them like this, was like, "Is there anything I can help you with?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I
oh.
refuse to shop in a store where everybody's on their phone." And so I think that is a huge impediment for retailers today, that they can't actually manage the behavior of their associates when they're on the sales floor. And so that to me is it's a big problem.
And I think it's gonna get bigger. because where you see retail technology shifting is that the cash desk is going to go away. And in many cases, it has in many, many stores today. And we're giving sales associates these mobile devices for their operating system, their POS, everything through a phone.
Hmm.
So I agree with you, but I also think that the store experience is changing because the customer is also changing, where they want Amazon Prime service, right? They want everything fast. But they also want that experience that you get from a luxury store, which is, customer service, delightful product, which is what we used to do, right?
Right.
Back in the day. So now it's become, I think it's not a requirement anymore. So that's why we need to shift the way we think about the store. But when you think about POS and OMS systems that are in the store, that is going to change.
Hmm.
So I think limiting what sales associates have access to on those devices is definitely going to help, but those devices are going to stay and increase,
Yeah,
sadly.
I mean, it's been that way at Apple for years.
Yeah.
The difference is Apple has had a great customer experience. You walk in and you are greeted and acknowledged by somebody almost immediately. You are, assigned a rep. Like they're so busy that they have a queuing system. And so there's nobody just mindlessly scrolling on Instagram,
Yeah.
ignoring customers. So I think it's how the technology is deployed. I think the future of retail for bricks and mortar has to be a higher touch, higher quality experience. If I want quick and
Yes.
dirty, I'm just going to go to Amazon. If I want the same jeans that I bought or the same pants that I bought from a certain store in the same size, I'm just going to point and click. But if I want to shop, if I want to try things on, if I'm looking for a new wardrobe, I want to
Mhm.
go to a store where they actually care about me and they're going to bring things to the fitting room and they're actually going to try to help me have a shopping experience. And I feel like that art of even selling in the fitting room is not what it once was. Like I can
Yeah.
remember just like it was awful. The clothes that you would have to put back out on the shop floor because you brought so much back to the fitting room because you knew that if they tried it, they would buy it. And so you couldn't sell it unless they put it on. And I mean, that happened to me at a White House Black Market location in Naples, Florida, a couple of years ago, maybe even
Hmm.
years ago when I was shopping. But it's a rarity that I see that this happens today.
Yeah. And I think really it's not only because we're not hiring the right salespeople or training the right salespeople. I think that there is a disconnect between what's happening in a corporate office and what's happening on the shop floor. Now, I talk about this a lot around merchandising execution, like what we're actually thinking, what the collection's going to look like, and how it's translated and executed on the shop floor. There's a major disconnect. But I think that there needs to be more engagement with the corporate office and the buying team and the C-suite connecting with sales associates on the shop floor to
Mhm.
say what their expectations are, why are we even there, what outcomes we're trying to achieve, and how their behavior and interaction with the customer and how they build that relationship with the customer will impact revenue on a bigger scale. I think they need to feel like they're part of that big picture.
Mhm.
But the fact is today we're not seeing C-suite walking the shop floor, and that's been a
Mhm.
problem for quite some time. As a buyer, I'll tell you I spent a lot of time on the shop floor because my customers were everything. If I didn't have them, I didn't sell product. Millions of dollars of inventory was, in my fault on my hands, right? And that's
Yeah.
never something we want. So I think that disconnect is a big problem today in
Mhm.
retail.
Yeah. I think there's also a bit of a challenge, and I'm going to date myself here, but the younger generation that typically work in a retail environment have grown up on screens, and
Mhm.
in a lot of cases their communication skills, their face-to-face communication skills are not developed the same way because they've always been communicating through technology using a screen or a device versus having to have in-person conversations with strangers. And so I think there's also uh, a part of that in teaching people the soft skills of how to build rapport on the shop floor, how to walk up to a stranger and strike up a conversation.
Yeah.
Those are things that really matter in the retail environment.
Yeah, and in life too, right?
Absolutely.
Um, I think, I was teaching at FIT this semester, and I taught fashion marketing. And of course, as a marketer, which you are, you
Mhm.
understand that there's so many different facets to being a great marketer, right? You have to be great in person, you have to be great online, and you have to build relationships. I think that's the true
Mhm.
center of marketing. And
Mhm.
so what I would teach in the class was, I would say, okay, close your books. We're going to talk about what's happening in retail. So every morning, and I taught 3 times a week, I would start the class with headlines. And the class they would have 5 minutes. Then they would come up to the class either in pairs or maybe in their case study group and talk about the headlines that were important to them. And I think that really changed the way that they felt about not only learning, that it was so much more than, being on their computer and writing reports and multiple choice questions, that engaging with other people and networking within your classroom, that there's so much value there.
Yeah.
And I think they found a lot of traits that they didn't know they had. I would get them coming up to me. We were so shy before were in your class. Yeah, because you're protected by the screen, right?
Right.
So I
Exactly.
think that's part of it. Like we have to teach and we have to train differently too. I think
Mhm.
that's part of it.
Yeah, I would
But
agree. I would agree.
yeah. Well, I have
So
a question for you, Lisa, before you even ask me another one, because I think this could be really valuable. If if you could, what would you teach your 20-year-old self today? If you could go back in time, what would you teach her?
That's a great question. What would I teach my 20-year-old self? I would probably teach her to take bigger risks earlier in life, and that everything would be okay. I think that in my early 20s, I was more conservative. I was risk averse. I didn't have the confidence that I have today to take risks. And I look back at my life, and I missed a huge opportunity because I was a bit risk averse. So
Mm,
when uh, I think I was almost 30 when TELUS acquired ClearNet, and I had stock options at the time, and I could have exited the business. I could have used the money that I made from the stock options to buy a business, start a franchise. I actually looked into franchising, and I was advised that I probably wouldn't be a good fit for franchising because I knew too much about running a business and I would want to do things my own way. But then in 2006, when I did finally leave and open a dealership, the market in the cell phone industry had changed so much that I had missed an opportunity when there was a lot of growth happening that I probably could have taken advantage of sooner. And so I think what I would tell my younger self is to take more risks earlier in life when it comes to business.
I love that. I
What
think
about
we are.
you?
Oh,
It's a great
I didn't.
question. I love that question. That's a great question.
I would say that I think I would tell my 20-year-old self that it's okay to be different. I
Mm.
think that especially in the fashion industry, we really, you try to mold yourself into this certain persona. Um, I'll give you an example when, working in the buying office in a major luxury brand in Canada department store, the only one, I'm sure you can guess which one it is. I was told, and I think this was my first buying job. So I was an assistant, and I was told 2 months into the job that I didn't belong there. Like taken into a room and was told that, Lisa, I don't think buying is for you and I don't think you belong here. And I was so taken aback as, a young 20 something year old that this person is saying this to me.
Wow.
And I could have taken that in two different ways. And I think that I had to sit and think about that And definitely I shed some tears because fashion was life to me.
Mhm.
That what this person was saying to me wasn't about me, that it was about her. And because she didn't feel comfortable that I was ruffling a few feathers about questioning why she was buying product, because I wanted to learn, right?
Right.
And I think standing up for myself and just being comfortable in my skin, I wish I was more comfortable, and that because I was different, that it was okay. I didn't know that it was okay back then, and I think now I do. So that's the advice I would give my 20-year-old self, that even though I didn't feel represented and I didn't know that I was different until someone really told me,
Mhm.
that it's okay to be different,
Mhm.
that that is my superpower.
Yeah. Sally Hogshead writes about that in her book Fascinate. She actually says different is better than better. It's one of my favorite quotes from that book.
I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. It's funny how those moments leave impressions on us in our life, right? There are moments like that where someone takes us aside and tells us we're special that we remember from a leadership perspective in business. And then there are the moments where, people take the wind from beneath us, and it can really change the course of your life. So you clearly didn't choose to stop chasing your dream. So what did you do after that happened?
Oh, I chose to find a new job. Definitely. But what
Mhm,
I felt that I just needed to work harder. And, as a daughter of immigrants,
mhm,
that's already instilled in us as a person of color,
mhm,
someone who already feels that, okay, I know we're different, but we're trying to fit in.
mhm,
I think that it makes you work harder. So I think this really pushed me to work even harder and to prove her wrong,
mhm,
because I knew that this was a life that I wanted. Like, I love fashion, I love retail. And anyone who meets me and talks to me knows that. So the fact that she was questioning it, I didn't know that it was about her. I know that now, but I still, like, it stings to this day
mhm.
because she was supposed to be my leader. And she was actually fired, I think,
Wow.
a few years later. And I know bounced around a lot, but it's if I saw her today, I think I would still feel hurt
Mhm,
for sure. Because I think
mhm,
that's you're like you said, like these are the things that you remember, but I think they mold you, right?
mhm,
I mean, being comfortable in your own skin, especially as an entrepreneur, I think you can, fake it till you make it, but you have to be comfortable. You have to build that confidence every single day. You have to get up and get out of bed. And, I was listening to your podcast the other day about you. You wanted to sleep in, but then you just got up and you went to the gym. And I was like, exactly. I feel the same way. And in many cases, more often than not, but you have to
mhm.
push yourself, right?
Yeah, you have to. You have to have the self-discipline. It doesn't matter if you own your own business or even, I mean, if you want your career to go places, you have to have that same drive. And I think that I used to think that I worked hard when I worked for somebody else. And then when I opened my own business, I realized, wow, there was a lot more gas in the tank that I didn't know I had, because you
Yes.
definitely push yourself to work even harder when it's your own, because there's that whole sense of pride and ownership and that determination that you will not be a statistic. I mean, we all know the stats say, what is it, 1 in 5 or 90%, 1 in 5 businesses succeeds, I think, in the first 5 years, like 90% of them don't. And then I
Wow.
think there's another 90% that don't make it to 10 years. So the stats on small businesses making it are not good. And so if you don't
Mhm.
want to be a statistic, you've got to do the things that other people are not prepared to do. And that to me means not necessarily like you talk about not being confident. I think you have to become comfortable being uncomfortable. When you
Yes.
get comfortable with being uncomfortable and you recognize, okay, this is uncomfortable and that's okay. I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to move through it. It's like you build a muscle that helps you to
Yeah.
be able to handle the different things that are thrown at you.
I love that you said that. because I think that is, you hit the nail on the head. It is being comfortable with being uncomfortable, and being okay for people to say no to you. I think I
Mhm.
really took that to heart in the first couple of years. Even when I knew that, like, I could really help these people, like, I feel so confident that I could
Mhm.
help them, and they weren't ready for me. But that's not on me, that's on them. That's how I
Right.
try to look at it, but it's
And
hard.
yeah, it is, and no is sometimes not now. It's not
Yeah.
no doesn't mean never. It just means not now, and so I think that, that's one of the things that we have to learn as entrepreneurs is you are gonna hear some no's, and that's okay. An executive that I worked with at one point said to me, "Lisa, if half of what you're trying isn't failing, you're not trying enough." And so that really resonated with me. It's like, oh, if everything I do is working, then that means I'm missing opportunities. I'm not trying enough stuff because not everything is supposed to work. So I'd like to shift gears and for listeners on the show who have their own small retail business, they're not the Ralph Laurens of the world. They're family owned retail businesses. They're, you know, maybe up to a million, just over $1 million a year in sales. They're in small communities. What advice do you have for them to help them, A, maybe drive sales, B, manage their inventory mix better, and C, strengthen their profits? Like, what would you tell a small business owner based on what you know about retail?
Yeah, I would say don't think small. That's the first thing. Don't think of yourself as a small business. You are a business. And what you need are process steps. I think building process is so critical up front, because you're not going to start off in, you know, I say this to so many people, so I'm trying to think of the best way to say this, but I would say is develop your processes, invest in technology so that you can start to manage and think about your inventory from, like, with using insights, using AI, using the tools that are available to you. Building your assortment plan and planning your buys and your operational activities in Excel is not going to cut it. And this is where a lot of businesses start. I talked
Mhm.
to a brand, I think a few days ago, and they're looking at, they're projecting 10 million in sales. I was like, "Have you invested in a planning and buying system?" "No, we do everything in Excel." That's your first mistake, because you will never be able to scale if you're limited by the technology that you're using today to run your business.
So,
And
what
that's
is
why
a
I say
planning
don't.
tool? What is a planning tool that a smaller business could actually use? Like, can you
Yeah,
talk about what does that mean? Because
sure.
I think that for some of these business owners, they go to shows and they buy inventory and they're buying on gut instinct. They're not
Oh,
planning the
yeah.
way you plan. So how, like, talk to me about that. What does planning mean? What does it look like?
Sure.
And what is a tool that they could use?
Yeah, and in fact, I'll start with the tools. So today, even the larger corporations, where they're using Excel, and then they're putting it into like a huge legacy system like an SAP or a Salesforce, or
Mhm.
they're using these big systems that we don't need to use anymore. With the pandemic, retail technology accelerated to a point where we have many, many more choices that are affordable, that are cloud based, that smaller brands and retailers can purchase. And from Aptos, which is a large one, they also have options, to Tulio, which is a smaller based solution, a smaller base for smaller businesses. There are so many options and they're affordable. And what that gives brands and retail owners is an opportunity to plan their business using insights and leveraging data from other parts of the world that will help them plan what their assortments should be, how deep they should buy their assortments, how they should think about sizes. Because the challenge in planning without a tool and without that help is that it's very easy to get it wrong. And when
Mhm.
you get it wrong, that inventory builds up and that's going to cost you money.
Mhm.
And
That's
if
where your
you
cash
have
flow goes.
exactly. And if you have inventory that is not selling, that's going to impact your future buys or your future opportunities to buy into product to sell newness, which is going to drive your customer into your store. So it is this whole cycle of we need to manage the inventory so that it only has a certain period of selling time if it's seasonal, but also think about planning into seasonless product so that it can live longer. Markdowns are not a great thing. They're a
Mm-mm.
good thing to drive some promotional activity, but with what's happening in the industry today around sustainability, around longevity of product, and a lot of customers cutting back on what they're buying into, we need to think about our product assortments differently, which is buy into seasonless products so that you never mark it down, like basics, key items, key drivers that are always going to be around that should never be marked down. And then, of course, an element of fashion and newness to get your customers into the store. So it's not only thinking about your assortment differently, but thinking about the tools you use to plan your assortment differently so that you can better predict what the customer is going to buy.
Right. So when you say assortment, do you mean the different categories in your store? So
Yeah,
if I'm going to look at my background in retail in the wireless industry, my assortment would be the different types of cell phones. My assortment would be the different categories of accessories potentially that go with those cell phones, those types of things. And so I'd be looking at my product mix, really, like what percentage
yep,
of inventory is going to be like how I used to do it is I would look at what are my what percentage of my inventory should be in the actual cell phones, but then I would break it down and I would look at it by product mix and I would say, okay, which how much should I have in flip phones versus smartphones versus Blackberries versus mic phones? Like these were all the different devices that we carried at the time. And so I would be looking at, that type of thing. Is that what you mean when you say assortment?
exactly.
Okay.
Yes. The assortment is your product mix. So it's everything that you have under your roof, whether you're an online store or a physical retail location. Uh, if you are a design led brand, so you only have your own product in the store,
Mhm.
you think about your product mix by category, like you were just saying. So if you are apparel and accessories, think about your tops and bottom ratio. What are you going to use for outfitting? Outfitting is very important. And if you are a multi-brand retailer and you're carrying multiple brands, thinking about your product mix as a whole. So your entire category
Mhm.
of pants, your entire category of tops, and then look at what is missing from your assortment. So finding that merchandising sweet spot is really important. And then
Mhm.
maybe filling it in with private labels. So these are all things to consider, but really when you're looking at your entire assortment, it is all the products within your online or offline store.
Mhm. One of the things that I have found when I've coached people in retail is that it it's often the amount of inventory that they have that is cannibalizing their profit margins
Yes.
because they buy too much inventory and they keep buying, buying, buying. And it's almost like they don't have maybe the tools to manage min-max levels. Like I had to learn that when I owned my retail store. What is the minimum amount of inventory that I need to have on hand from a dollar perspective? And what is the maximum amount that I should have on hand so that I'm not putting my shop at risk? And to me, those min-max levels were really important for planning inventory so that I didn't end up with a bunch of things that needed to be marked down. Because it's really easy when you
Oh,
start
yes.
buying to, especially if you're buying things that are not super expensive, to buy a whole bunch of it. And then all of a sudden, all of those things that weren't very expensive start to add up because they
Yeah.
compound. You've got multiples. And all of a sudden you're sitting on, a store with inventory that way too much inventory for the size of your business.
Yeah. And I think this is where planning becomes front and center. You should always
Mhm.
have a plan, like your framework. What are you going to buy into? with the support of data and a planning system to help you understand what you should be forecasting, especially down to size. If
Mhm.
you have sizes that you're buying into and outside of accessories or hardware, if you're buying apparel, you or even footwear, you need to understand what sizes you need to buy into.
Mhm.
That's just one part of it. I think the second part of the entire equation is building those relationships with your vendors so that you can negotiate better, so that they can hold product for you, so that you have the ability to reorder, you have the ability to test before you buy thousands of units of something. And I think when people say they buy from their gut, they're also using data to buy. You're thinking about your customer and what you know that they will love, that will delight them. This is
Mhm.
all part of the data. It's not only just buying from your gut. And I think that in a combination of using data analytics, using historical data to understand what you need to buy into instead of, going to a show and buying everything you love, it should really be about the customer and what the customer wants to see from you. That should
Mhm.
be at the center.
You talked about technology advancing during COVID. Do you have any recommendations on good, affordable POS systems that are allow retailers to manage online and in-store inventory simultaneously? Because
There
I
are
know that's a
so many.
challenge for some, right?
Yeah.
Something if something is on the shop floor and somebody buys it online and you are a single location store, how are people managing that and what technology is helping them to do that?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about the advancements in technology and retail. We have so many solutions today that are cloud-based, that are allowing retailers, brands to see their inventory in real time. And
Mhm.
that is something that I didn't even have when I was buying at Ralph Lauren. Like, I would see sales the next day. I wouldn't be able to see how my inventory was shifting on, in real time in that
Yeah.
moment. So that's a big change for retailers and brands today. And there are so many more affordable choices that will talk to your legacy systems that you already have in place. But if you're a new business starting out, I would say, go to like an NRF trade show, go to a shop talk, go to the lead conference. There's so many options available today that we never have seen before. And
Mhm.
now bring in resale and returns data and how we can use that in a better way to inform us what we should be buying into. These are all things that are readily available. In many cases, these smaller retailers and brands are leveraging like a Shopify.
Mhm.
Shopify has so many plugins today, and they're making it a lot easier for smaller retailers to have access to systems that are cloud-based, that will allow them to have visibility into real-time inventory management. And that's really going to help them manage across channel, whether you have a drop ship model, whether you have inventory fulfillment from your store or from your DC. This is all going to bring it together. And it's all about real-time visibility into where your inventory is in that moment.
I completely forgot about the NRF conference.
Oh,
I've gone to that
I'm
show in New
going.
York. It's
Oh,
just
yeah?
it's like it's crazy. It's so fun. It's so
It
big.
is. It is crazy. I'm going to be there too. So if any of
How
the
are you?
listeners are around, please come
When
find
is
me.
it? It's usually like in February, isn't it?
It's January. It's in the dead
January.
of winter. We actually,
Yes.
in New York, we haven't even had snow yet. It's coming this weekend, apparently. It's mid-Jan.
Mhm.
It is, I think, Jan 15th, 14th, 13th, 14th, 15th. It's
Yeah.
like around there. So there's a lot of events alongside and adjacent to NRF as well,
Mhm.
where, retailers, brands, they can learn about technology. There's a lot of it can be overwhelming. So definitely plan ahead. What are you
Yeah.
looking for? And then go after that. And then come find me if you have any questions and I'll help you.
I was just going to
Um,
say it would be a great event to go with a guide if you've never been, somebody who can actually guide you around and kind of show you the way. Because I can imagine if you showed up by yourself and you're just wandering around, completely overwhelming,
Yes, it
but it's
is. And
super cool.
it is. I mean, just being around the buzz of all the newness happening and innovation around not only product and how we're going to market, but how you can manage your inventory. That is, I'm such a nerd. It's very exciting
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's exciting. It's fun. You're making me think I should go next year. I can't go this year, but next year it would be fun to
I'll
go.
meet you there.
Take a group of retail business owners that want to go and want to learn and,
Oh, yeah.
go spend a few days there. That'd be fun.
I'll do that with you.
Yeah. Yeah,
That would
let's
be
do
very
it.
fun. I love
Yeah,
it.
go to some fun restaurants in New York.
New York is so fun. It
Yeah,
is
it is.
fabulous.
Yeah, 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 yeah. All right, so I have one last question for you.
Okay.
And that is, what is the best advice, business advice, that someone has ever given you?
Well, that's good. Um, you know, I would say the thing that comes to mind right away is offer up your opinion no matter you've what people are going to think of you. And I think that's something that I really had to lean into,
Mhm.
especially since starting my own firm. And I'm getting better and better at it. And I'll give you an example. When I first started, it would take me a whole day to write a LinkedIn post because I was so nervous to put my opinion out there. I'm like, oh my God, what are people going to think? Today, I comment on everything. And like that means something to me, obviously. But I am okay with being the contrarian. And I think that's something that I think about every day because it's okay to get it wrong. It's okay to be different. And that is the advice I would give anyone today, especially if they're an entrepreneur,
Mm,
because that's what's going to set you apart.
mhm,
And being authentic about it, because I think you have to believe in what you're saying. Like, don't
mm,
just say something just to say it. Um, really have an opinion and put it out there, and don't be
mhm.
scared to put it out there.
So, did someone give you that advice, or is
Oh,
that the advice you
yes,
would give them? Okay,
someone
someone
did.
gave you that advice.
Someone
Okay.
gave me that advice. And, we have a mutual person in common, right?
Mhm.
And I actually really, I think my entire business model was changed by talking to Alan.
Yeah.
And he, my husband is also, he runs the business with me, and he's been reading Alan's books for years and years and always talking about Alan. I'm like, okay, I need to meet this person. So we went to one of his sessions in New York. I think it
Yeah.
was last year. And I just felt everything just come together when I met him. And he's my coach today. So
Mhm,
I would say invest in coaching and really believe in your point of view because it means something. Otherwise,
mhm.
why do you exist? I know that's
Yeah.
very dramatic, but that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I think that's great advice. Embrace your different, embrace your weirdness, embrace what makes you
Yes.
unique, right?
Yes.
We want to be different, but then we do so much to try to blend in.
Oh,
And
yeah.
back to what Sally Hogg said, different is better than better. And so let your difference stand out and embrace it wholeheartedly and be contrarian. One of the
Yes.
exercises that Alan has had us do at some of his thought leadership events that I like is he makes us write predictions. And it can be intimidating. He wants a list of 10 predictions for the upcoming year, and you have to write these predictions. And of course, when you're writing them, the little itty bitty shitty committee in your head is going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, am I going to be right? Because we're so afraid that we're going to be wrong. But it's just such a powerful exercise in just like, what do you think is going to happen? And like, it's a powerful exercise in thinking. It's a powerful exercise in writing, in declaring it, and then not being attached to it. Because you know what?
Yes.
Nobody comes back and says, oh, you predicted blah, blah, blah. And it didn't happen. We're so worried
Exactly.
about what other people think. And yet other people aren't even thinking about us.
I know. Nobody has time,
Nobody has
right?
time. Yeah.
I know. Nobody has time.
So I know I said that was my last question, but you mentioned that you have been teaching in New York. How has that experience been for you?
Oh, I have loved it. Uh, I think being around the younger generation is has been eye-opening for me. When
Mhm.
I work with, a lot of my brands, the retailers that I work with and market leaders that I talk to, Gen Z is such a focus point for these brands and retailers.
Mhm.
And teaching them and talking about what retail, like the industry, what's happening in the industry today, it's so fascinating to get their point of view firsthand. And
Mhm.
what I learned is that we don't give them enough credit. And when we think about where revenue is projected to come from, 40% of revenue projected is to come from Gen Z purchasing. And if we're not listening to them, going back to traditional marketing ways of having focus groups and actually talking to them, I think that we're really going to miss an opportunity to connect with that consumer.
Mhm.
And that was the most fascinating thing I would say that came out of teaching, is that I built beautiful relationships with this younger generation. I was able to teach them, but they were also able to teach me. And I loved every minute of it.
That's great. That's great. I love what I learn from the young people that work on my team. I'm always learning from them. And, it's interesting. I also have a client who recently said to me, have you ever used, what is it? VR?
Oh, yeah.
Like in the
Virtual reality.
metaverse? Yeah,
Yeah.
and I haven't. And so I'm hosting an event at the end of January, and she's going to bring her equipment so that we can all try it.
Wow.
And so
Oh,
it's
that's
fun
amazing.
to be around young people that are experimenting and doing things and thinking of things differently. Like I really do enjoy that. Um, Before we wrap up, you were just awarded the Rethink Retail Global Influencer Award
I
for the
was.
third year in a row.
Yes. I'm very excited.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful experience to be part of this group. And I think the first time I went, I was like shocked. I'm like, what? People want to hear what I have to say. So
It's
I think that
amazing.
just validates, right? Some of the things we were talking about today, that, just don't worry about what people think and really talk about what you believe in and what you're passionate about.
I
So
think you
that's what I
should
did.
I think you should take that award all 3 years in a row and put it in a little envelope, like press releases for it in a little envelope and send it to that person that told you you didn't belong.
Oh, I should, right?
I
That's
just
a
want to
great idea.
thank you for the advice you gave me so many years ago. You were right. I
Yeah,
didn't belong. I was meant to disrupt, and that I have done.
that
That's
is
what you should
wonderful.
do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. I'm going to do that.
Yeah, you
Well, at least
should.
think about it. I'll just put in the envelope. At least I'll get that far.
But sometimes people, I mean, I think sometimes when those things happen, they happen for a reason. Like maybe in some way you needed to hear that to double down on being who you are and to get
Yeah.
to where you are today. And it's unfortunate that in those moments it hurts, but sometimes things like that shape our determination. I've had
Hmm.
moments like that myself where, I remember I think I shared this on a previous podcast, but I put together a price list for my services when I first started my business. And I shared it with a colleague of mine and asked her what she thought. And she said, "Well, I think if you want to get any business in this town, it should be half that you should be charging." And I
Mm.
was like appalled. You want me to charge half of what I'm charging? Like that's crazy. I'm not doing it if I can only get paid half of what I've put together. And so that afternoon I went out to see a client. I put together this offer specifically to see this client, which is actually a retail shopping center.
Oh,
And
wow.
they bought my highest offer. And the only question they had is when we finish with this, can we buy more? And so, it was that almost like the trying to take my confidence away that fueled my
Yeah.
desire to stick with it. So I think sometimes those things are great stories to be able to tell later on because there are other women out there listening that
Hmm.
have somebody who is telling them that they can't do something right now. And they're hearing that I've done that, you've done that, we've both experienced it and we overcame it and chose to continue.
Hmm.
And maybe that'll inspire them to do the same thing.
I hope so.
Thank you, Lisa, for being here. I feel
Thank you,
like I could chat
Lisa.
with you all day long.
I know.
I
That
love
would
that
be
we've had this
wonderful.
special episode on retail. So if you're listening and you're a retailer, make sure you comment on our posts. We'll be sharing this on all the regular socials, and let Liza know what questions you have and what you loved. And of course, I will have all of her contact information in the show notes so that if you want to reach out to her to learn more about what she does, you can do that. Thank you, Liza, for being on the show.
Thanks, Lisa.